Thanks to Del McAllister. Joining us now is Karl Deeter from Irish Mortgage Brokers, and also by Aoife Walsh from Respond. And Aoife, I can start with you first of all, because Respond helps people who are in housing difficulties. If you look at what's happening in the courts, it only seems a handful every week of people coming into difficulty. But on the ground, for the people you're helping, what is the reality?
Absolutely, Mark. We are inundated with calls at the moment from people who are in fear of losing their homes. We've seen over the past 9 months the number of repossession orders being issued by the courts have increased by 120%. The number of cases in the last 2 years has trebled. So we're obviously very concerned for these people, because at the moment the social housing waiting list is in excess of 56,000 families. So there simply isn't the option of housing these people.
I assume there's particularly black spots where there's high unemployment, job losses over the past year, and also negative equity. I mean, the particular parts of the country hardest hit?
Obviously, for those in Dublin are particularly hit by negative equity, because they've seen a reduction in their house value of 30, 40, in some cases 50%. So while they are falling into arrears, the option of selling their home and repaying their debt simply isn't available to them.
Now, Karl, I would assume that over the next year, I think government said today we'll have 13.5% unemployment next year. There's a time lag, isn't there, in this problem really hitting home for many people?
There is, but we're also compounding that, because every solution we have seems to put the problem off for another day. And the problem I have with something like the IBF thing that came out today was that it's kind of like putting an ice pack on a thermometer to bring down the temperature, but the person still has a fever. Our problem is going to be unemployment and ability to service debt. That's any debt. Rates are at the lowest they've ever been, and if you're in trouble now, is that really going to change? So is it more responsible, given the fact that we don't have an endless supply of money, to look at other avenues, or to increase things like mortgage supplement to let people take longer paying off their loans? I mean, part of this is that banks don't want to have unperforming loans. So if they can get any money from a borrower, it keeps that loan looking good on their balance sheet. There is a motivation behind this that you have to understand, and it's not about a bank being a charity. That's not what they do.
But it's an appalling vista, isn't it, that, you know, the alternative, what is the alternative? To close down on people who are struggling and trying in some ways to pay?
Well, Mark, I mean, another analogy would be, do you let that person try and swim to shore now, or row out another 2 miles and say do it 2 years down the road? If you're in arrears, you're getting charged penalty interest. We're seeing a lot of negative amortization, which is what that means is that you're not making a repayment, and the interest that you would have paid is being added to the principal, and that compounds up very quick. We need to find something that is sustainable for all participants. And I think that something like the Mortgage Rescue Scheme, which is what Charlie was alluding to in the UK and the USA, would be a better way of doing it. I think that the idea of someone being able to sell their actual mortgage itself would help free up parts of the market. There's other solutions out there. It's not just about putting off this problem and you know, keeping it on the never, never.
Aoife, what do you think that something like the mortgage interest supplement, the bankers today, their announcement, simply just postpones the inevitable?
Well, we'd welcome the announcement today by the IBF, but what we would say is that it's only one of a series of measures that needs to be brought in. We're particularly concerned about the area regarding subprime lending. We've seen before the courts that the repossession cases being heard, generally between 60 to 70% relate to the subprime lenders. Now, those weren't included in the IBF announcement today, so we're calling on the government to put in place some new legislation whereby the subprime lenders are also forced to negotiate with those in arrears and offer some kind of help and assistance to them as well. The
Start, which is one of those mortgage providers, said that they agree with they wholeheartedly agree with the ethos of the banker's statement today.
Well, I'd welcome a statement from Start, but even last Monday alone, there were 76 cases came before the High Court in relation to repossessions, and 28 of those cases related to smart mortgages alone. So while we welcome the statement, we'd like them to put in practice what they're saying.
I want to ask both of you now about the mortgage interest supplement. Now, leaving aside what more can be done, Karl, it really sounds very tough, the conditions with which people have to go through to get this payment.
It is. It's an odd example of the people who need it the most aren't actually able to get it in many cases. I can tell you from writing mortgages in what I do for a living that a lot of mortgages are assessed on a joint income basis. So say if we bought a house together, if one person loses their job, that mortgage can go into arrears, and I'm still working and trying to pay my debts and keep everything going, but we actually won't get that supplement because both of us aren't unemployed. And that, to me, it's kind of ludicrous. And there's other requirements on it. If your house is for sale, you can't get it. I mean, one of the first things people when they get into financial trouble is say, listen, maybe we can get out of this, put the place up for sale. And then you have to prove that it was affordable. Again, I'm telling you from within industry, like the lending was on big multipliers. We can't prove affordability.
And if it's tough for people who are forced to try and get multiples of their salary to be now told, well, you did wrong. You can't get any help.
I mean, Karl mentioned there the issue of affordability. Back in the 1990s, generally, the loan-to-income ratio was about 4.2, 4.3 to 1. We saw in this decade it increased to 10, 11, in some cases 12 to 1. So that actually is working against people now because they bought houses in the first place that they couldn't afford, and now that they're in arrears and in difficulty, it's as if it's going against them. So, I mean, I think maybe some of the criteria in relation to the mortgage interest supplement has to be lessened and looked at again.
Karl, can you give us a specific priority, if you were Minister for Finance in the budget, that you would do to try and head off a mortgage crisis, alleviate what is happening now? Put yourself in that chair.
Yeah, I'd be probably as confused as Brian Lenihan is. It's a horrible situation to be in, especially given that we don't have endless resources to deal with everything from homelessness to NAMA to mortgage problems. But I do think that we could be more creative. I do think that there are market solutions that aren't being addressed. I do think that there are ways to alleviate poverty in the lower age society who have experienced a lot of unemployment, and in the elderly population who have seen a lot of their investments wiped out.
Give us one government action.
Okay, well, they could change the property rules regarding life insurance so that if you're 65, you can sell your life policy. Somebody else pays the premium, and then when you die, they get the money. It's a little macabre, but it will provide them with cash that they otherwise couldn't access. And that's just one example. There's lots of others.
Aoife, address this moral hazard argument that people put forward. Some people were reckless in borrowing too much money for their houses. For government intervention, well, that would be wrong. That would actually, basically alleviate them of their responsibility.
But if you look at the alternative is these people are going to lose their homes and they're going to have to go on the local authority housing waiting list. So eventually our tax money is going to have to go to house these people. So why not try and act now so they can stay in their homes, and it will actually be more beneficial to the exchequer in the long term.
Last word, Karl Deeter.
I just think it's dangerous to have an autopilot solution where we automatically say people have to keep their homes. Renting is a totally viable solution for a lot of people to provide them with shelter, and everybody needs shelter. I would say to people, you need to know when to walk away, and that's very important. And solutions like this that are blanket methods of stopping that, I don't know that it's always the best for everyone, because if you're deeper in the hole 2 years down the line, are you going to be better off or worse off?
We're going to have to leave it there, but I'm sure we're going to be returning to this, unfortunately. Aoife Walsh, thank you for joining us, and Karl Deeter. Miriam.